This is part 3. After President Ronald Reagan was elected, an important meeting was held in Washington, D.C. in December 1980 under the auspices of the Club of Rome and the Socialist International. Both these organizations are directly responsible to the Committee of 300. The main agenda was to formulate ways and means of how to neutralize the Reagan presidency. A group plan was adopted, and as we look back, it's perfectly clear that the plan the conspirators agreed to follow has been very successful. In order to get an idea of how vast and how all-pervasive is this conspiracy, it would be appropriate at this point to name the goals set by the Committee of 300 for the pending conquest and control of the world. These are There are at least 40 known branch officers of the Committee of 300, and we shall be listing them all, together with a description of their functions. Once this is studied, it becomes easy to understand how one central conspiratorial body is able to operate so successfully, and why it is that no power on earth can withstand their onslaught against the very foundations of a civilized, progressive world based on freedom of the individual, especially as it is declared in the United States Constitution. Thanks to the sworn testimony of Guerzoni, Italy and Europe, but not the United States, learned that Kissinger was behind the death of Aldo Moro. This tragic affair demonstrates the ability of the Committee of 300 to impose its will upon any government without exception. Secure in its position as a member of the most powerful secret society in the world, I'm not talking about Freemasonry, Kissinger not only terrified Moro, but carried through on his threats to eliminate Moro if he did not give up his plan to bring the economic and industrial progress to Italy. In June and July of 1982, the wife of Aldo Moro testified in open court that her husband's murder came about as a result of serious threats against his life made by what she called a high-ranking United States political figure. Mrs. Eleonora Moro repeated the precise phrase reportedly used by Kissinger in the sworn testimony of Guerzoni. Either you stop your political line or you will pay dearly for it. Recalled by the judge, Guerzoni was asked if he could identify the person Mrs. Moro was talking about. Guerzoni replied that it was indeed Henry Kissinger, as he had previously intimated. Guerzoni went on to explain to the court that Kissinger had made his threats in Moro's hotel room during the Italian leader's official visit to the United States. Moro, then Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Italy, a NATO member country, was a man of high rank, one who should never have been subjected to mafia-like pressures and threats. Moro was accompanied on his American visit by the President of Italy in his official capacity. Kissinger was then, and still is, an important agent in the service of the Royal Institute for International Affairs, a member of the Club of Rome and the Council of Foreign Relations. Kissinger's role in destabilizing the United States by means of 3 wars, the Middle East, Korea, and Vietnam, is well known, as is his role in the Gulf War, in which the United States Army acted as mercenaries for the Committee of 300 in bringing Kuwait back under its control, and at the same time making an example out of Iraq, so that other small nations would not be tempted to work out their own destiny. Kissinger, who threatened the late Ali Bhutto, president of the sovereign nation of Pakistan. Bhutto's crime was that he favored nuclear weapons for his country. As a Muslim state, Pakistan felt threatened by continual Israeli aggression in the Middle East. Bhutto was judicially murdered in 1979 by the Council on Foreign Relations representative in the country, General Zia al-Haq. In his planned ascent to power, al-Haq encouraged a frenzied mob to set fire to the U.S. Embassy in Islamabad in an apparent attempt to show the CFR that he was his own man and able to secure more foreign aid, and it was later learned to murder Richard Helms. Several years later, al-Haq paid with his life for intervening in the war raging in Afghanistan. His C-130 Hercules aircraft was hit by an ELF, electric allow frequency, shot shortly after it took off, causing the aircraft to loop into the ground. The Club of Rome, acting on the Committee of 300's orders to eliminate General al-Haq, had no compunction in sacrificing the lives of a number of U.S. servicemen on board the flight, including a U.S. Army Defense Intelligence Agency group headed by Brigadier General Herbert Wassam. General al-Haq had been warned by the Turkish Secret Service not to travel by plane, as he was targeted for a mid-air bombing. With this in mind, al-Haq took the United States team with him as an insurance policy, as he commented to his inner circle of advisers. In my 1989 work, Terror in the Skies, I gave the following account of what happened. Shortly before al-Haq's C-130 took off from a Pakistan military base, a suspicious-looking truck was seen close to the hangar that housed the C-130. The control tower warned base security, but by the time action was taken, the C-130 was already airborne and the truck had gone. A few minutes later, the plane began looping the loop until it hit the ground and exploded in a boil of fire. There is no explanation for such behavior by the C-130 aircraft, with a marvelously reliable record, and the joint Pakistan-United States Board of Inquiry found no pilot error or mechanical or structural failure. Looping the loop is a recognized trademark of an aircraft hit by ELF fire. ELF fire, I'll remind you, was electric allow frequency. That the Soviet Union had been able to develop high peak radio frequency devices, or has been able to develop high peak radio frequency allowances, is known to the West through the work of Soviet scientists who work in the Kurchatov Atomic Energy Institute's Intensive Relativistic Electron Beam Division. Two of its specialists were Y.A. Vinogradov and A.A. Rudhadsky. Both scientists worked in the Lebedev Physics Institute, which specializes in electronic and X-ray lasers. After receiving this information, I searched for confirmation from other sources and found that in England, the International Journal of Electronics had published some material which appeared to confirm the information given me about the method chosen to shoot down General al-Haq's C-130. In addition, the information was confirmed by two of my intelligence sources. I received some useful information from a Soviet scientific paper on these subjects, published in England under the title Soviet Radio Electronics and Communications Systems. There was no doubt in my mind that General al-Haq had been murdered. The truck seen near the C-130 hangar undoubtedly carried a mobile ELF device of the type the Soviet armed forces are known to possess. According to written testimony by Bhutto, smuggled out of the country while he was in prison, Kissinger severely threatened him. "I will make a horrible example if you continue with your nation-building policies." Bhutto had fallen afoul of Kissinger and the Club of Rome by calling for a nuclear energy program to bring Pakistan into a modern industrialized state, which in the eyes of the Committee of 300 was a direct contravention of its orders delivered by Kissinger to the Pakistani government. What Kissinger was doing when he threatened Bhutto was not official U.S. policy, but the policy of the modern-day Illuminati. One needs to have a clear understanding of just why it is that nuclear power so hated all over the world, and why the fake environmentalist movement established and financially supported by the Club of Rome, was called upon to wage war on nuclear energy. With nuclear energy generating electricity in cheap and abundant supplies, third world countries would gradually become independent of US foreign aid and begin to assert their sovereignty. Nuclear generated energy is the key, electricity is the key to bringing third world countries out of their backward state, a state which the Committee of 300 has ordered to remain in position. Less foreign aid means less control of a country's natural resources by the IMF. It was this idea of developing nations taking charge of their destiny that was anathema to the Club of Rome and its ruling Committee of 300. We have seen opposition to nuclear power in the United States successfully used to block industrial development in conformity with the club's post-industrial zero-growth plans. Dependence upon the United States foreign aid actually keeps foreign countries in servitude to the Council on Foreign Relations. The people of the recipient countries receive very little of the money as it usually ends up in the pockets of government leaders who allow the natural raw materials of the country to be savagely stripped by the IMF. Mugabe of Zimbabwe, formerly Rhodesia, is a good example of how raw material assets, in this case high-grade chrome ore, is controlled through foreign aid. Lonrho, the giant conglomerate run by Angus Ogilvy, an important member of the Committee of 300, on behalf of his cousin, Queen Elizabeth II, now has total control of this valuable resource, while the people of the country sink ever deeper into poverty and misery, notwithstanding a handout in excess of 300 million from the US dollars from the United States. Lonrho has now a monopoly of Rhodesian chrome and charges any price it likes, whereas under the Smith government this was not allowed. A reasonable price level was maintained for 25 years prior to the Mugabe regime taking power. While there were problems during the 14-year rule of Ian Smith, since his departure, unemployment has quadrupled in Zimbabwe, and Zimbabwe is in a state of chaos and de facto bankruptcy. Mugabe received enough foreign aid from the United States in the region of $300 million per annum to enable him to build 3 hotels on the French Côte d'Azur, Cap Ferrat and Monte Carlo, while his citizens grapple with disease, unemployment and malnutrition, not to mention an iron-fisted dictatorship that allows no complaints. Contrast this with the Smith government, which never asked for or received 1 red cent in aid from the United States. Thus it is clear that foreign aid is a powerful means of exercising control of countries such as Zimbabwe and indeed all African countries. It also keeps US citizens in a state of involuntary servitude and therefore less able to mount meaningful opposition to government. David Rockefeller knew what he was doing when his foreign aid bill became law in 1946. It has since then become one of the most hated laws on the statute books, following public exposure of what it is a racket run by government and paid for by we the people. How can the conspirators maintain their grip upon the world, and more especially their chokehold over the United States and Britain? One of the most asked questions is, how can any single entity know at all times what is going on and how control is exercised? This book will attempt to answer these and other questions. The only way we can come to grips with the reality of the conspirators' success is by mentioning and discussing secret societies, front organizations, government agencies, banks, insurance companies, international businesses, the petroleum industry, and hundreds of thousands of entities and foundations whose leading lights make up the membership of the Committee of 300, the ultimate controlling body that runs the world and has done so for at least 100 years. I'll stop this as part 3.